Hello friends, Frogopolis here, and welcome to part 2 at my look at the Planet of the Apes franchise. Do you remember 2001? You know, a year after we're all supposed to die in the Y2K apocalypse, or whatever it was. I was too young to understand at the time. Well, as a survivor of that cataclysmic event, I started going to the movies again with my parents, and around that time, the new Planet of the Apes was out, directed by Tim Burton. Now, for whatever reason, little me decided to watch Cats vs. Dogs instead, while my dad and brother went to go see Planet of the Apes, so I missed out on the theater-going experience for that film. But now it's 23 years later, and I'm finally getting around to watching it, so did I miss out on that fateful day? Let's find out. Starring Marky Wahlberg of the Marky Mark Bunch, this version sees humans training monkeys to help in space exploration. And by helping in space exploration, I mean they're shooting them out into the electromagnetic field first to see if it's safe before they send a human. When the space station starts receiving strange frequencies near the electromagnetic field, they send out the monkey Pericles to check it out. But Marky Mark, who's called Leo in this movie, is having none of that because he wants to fling himself into the electromagnetic field. And I think he should. Leo's gonna have to wait while Pericles does his thing, but uh-oh, things go wrong and our poor little monkey gets lost in the storm. Leo, against orders, puts himself in a space pod and goes after to save him. And then that rascal gets himself lost in the storm and loses communication with the rest of the team. You did it, Leo, great job! Leo is flung through the electrical storm until he eventually crashes onto a mysterious planet where, after leaving his pod, he almost immediately meets other humans and is then almost immediately captured by apes. No time to waste here, we gotta get to the practical effects. You know how much money we spent on this? And yes, right off the bat, when you see the apes, the practical effects look fantastic, and I wouldn't expect any less from a Tim Burton film. The way apes treat humans in this film is somehow even more horrifying than before, as we see them being used to pull the chariots with blinders on their face. And trust me, it's going to be just as bad as we go on. When they're being led into Ape City, we get this great shot showing how life works there and the general layout. I really like this bit of world building. You can see how lively everything is and how much personality there is. Another interesting detail in this telling of the story is that the humans can talk, and it really gives an extra layer of cruelty to the way the apes treat them, as they can no longer give the excuse of, oh, they're so dumb we thought they were like animals. We see scenes of a human child being given to an ape child as a pet, and even people being branded. This is incredibly dark stuff. So it's a little jarring when we're introduced to our comic relief character Limbo, played by Paul Giamatti. Though he does do a great job at being this incredibly evil slave trader. And this kind of brings me to one of my first big things about this movie. Its tone is all over the place. At one point, we saw the most horrific stuff you can see, like slavery's something you have to take with a serious amount of tact, and then we get like bits of comedic scenes here or there, and I don't know, it didn't sit right in places. It couldn't seem to decide where it wanted to be. There's also a lot of variety and personality given to the apes, which is great. It's one of the highlights of the film, but there's nothing really going on with the humans, even though they can talk now. And I know this isn't really a groundbreaking opinion, but Mark Wahlberg isn't a very good leading actor. His facial expressions throughout the film go from slightly confused to slightly angry, and sometimes he yells, but for the most part, he's not very compelling. Anyway, back to the horrific treatment of humans. Luckily, we have Ari, who loves humans and shows compassion to them because she wants to prove that they are equals, and she takes in Leo and another human called Diana as servants. Ari loves humans so much that she gets uncomfortably close to Leo and does not understand boundaries. Leo and Dana, it's Dana, okay, Dana, are tasked with helping set up a fancy dinner for these important political figures inside Ape City. Here we meet a couple of other humans, a close friend of Ari, Crawl, some senators, and some admirals, as they all have a big dinner together, and discuss the exciting monkey politics. Most importantly, this is where we get a further introduction to General Thade and Colonel Attar, who are our prime antagonists for this film. Back with the humans is mostly just Theo getting some more information. Of course, he has no plans on staying and is already starting to hatch a plan to escape. Of course, the other humans tell him that this is a death wish, and you can tell that humans have been in slavery to these apes for a very long time. Another important thing to point out is that General Thade actually has the hots for Ari and shows this by being as creepy and uncomfortable as possible. That night, Leo very easily breaks out of his confinement with a tool he got from the kitchen earlier, and the humans escape. It was that easy. The security in this city is terrible. They're able to just sneak into where the humans are being kept captive, and they just kind of break the wood to get Dana's family out of there. And of course you can't have a heart-pounding escape that might end in certain death without wacky hijinks. During their escape, they run into Ari and Crawl, and Ari is all gung-ho to help the humans, and Crawl's a little more hesitant with the whole high treason thing. Thankfully, he agrees to help, and they continue to make their way out of Ape City. Oh, and Dana's father, let me read here, Karubi, dies, saving them by being a distraction. I wish we had gotten more scenes between Dana and the rest of her family, so this scene would have hit a little more harder. And it's still sad, but as I've mentioned earlier, everyone this kind of comes off as an afterthought to the overall plot. Rest in peace, Karubi, I hardly knew ye. Leo leads them to the crash site and tries to find some intact gear so he can hope to contact the team he lost earlier. This is also where we find out that apparently apes don't like water because they can't swim, and I could probably fact check that, but for the purpose of the movie it's fine. So Leo dives underneath the water where his pod crashed, and is able to receive a bag that thankfully has some stuff still intact. Leo gets to show off his cool toys to everybody, but everything is ruined when Limbo shows up because he's been tracking them down. But he quickly surrenders when Leo just shoots his guards. That's our Limbo. So now he's with our prisoner, and we go back to Thade, who are spearheading the search for Ari, who they are convinced was kidnapped by the humans and couldn't have possibly been helping them. Thade also has to deal with the fact that his father hasn't been feeling too great recently, and he's on his deathbed. With his condition getting worse, he goes to go see him, and we meet his dad, Zaius. Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius. Not that Zaius, a different Zaius, played by Charlton Heston. Earlier in the film, Leo was shown the crash site from two concerned soldiers, because they had no idea what had made it. And those three were the only ones that knew about this until he decided to kill them to keep that secret. The only other person that he had shared this with was his dying father, who would have known the answers he was looking for. In a neat little role reversal, Zaius tells Thade of a time when humans ruled over apes and how awful they were, And to prove this, he asks Thae to smash open a sculpture, and there's a gun in it. And it's kind of hard to ignore Charlton Heston's storied history with the NRA, as he talks about how destructive and powerful the gun is, and how it's way stronger than anything the apes could ever have had. This is why the humans can't find out the truth about their past, because he's afraid that they'll repeat it. Then he says the line,
"This is a fancy restaurant! This is a fancy restaurant! This is a fancy restaurant! It's a fancy restaurant!"
and he dies. Bye. Back with Leo and friends, Leo's able to find a science doohickey in his bag of toys that shows him where the ship should be, and he starts heading there with them. And you might notice that I have not really talked about the other humans following them outside of Dana and her father, because there's not really much to talk about. I even forgot the name of one of them halfway through the movie. On their travels, they come across a camp of soldiers, but they have to cross the river to get to where they have to go. And Leo says that they don't have enough time to take the long way around, and they're going to have to wait until night to sneak by. Attar is there to make sure that they keep an eye out for these pesky humans, but he's not very good at his job apparently, as they just kind of make a mad dash across the lake at night, also stealing their horses. And of course, apes don't like water, so they're like, well, guess there's nothing we can do. Upon hearing about this, General Thade's jimmies are thoroughly rustled, as he and Attar mobilize their forces to Kalima, which is the name of this forbidden area that the ship is located in. The humans finally make it to the ship's signal, but it's not there. I wonder where it could be. Come on, Leo, you can do it. Where's the ship? We find out while they are walking around this very ship-looking wreckage that the ship actually crashed thousands of years ago before Leo got there because of time hole stuff, and this is pretty devastating for him to find out. Thankfully, it was powered by nuclear energy, and some stuff still works. We find out that shortly after they crashed, the once helpful apes they had on board were smarter and stronger than they thought and revolted. Leo blames himself for all this happening, and he should, because it's his fault. Now, of course, this begs a lot of questions, but before I can even think about trying to get the answers, a huge group of uncaptured humans show up upon hearing of a man defying the apes, and they start setting up their own rebellion. Of course, Leo realizes how dangerous this is, and he doesn't want to get any more people hurt, so he tries to get them all to leave, but they refuse. Where else are they gonna go? In an attempt to help the humans, Ari and Krull return to Thade, and Ari tries to sweet talk him into letting the humans go, saying that they're harmless. And this goes horribly. So plan B, blow up the apes. While the ape army is making its advance, a few of the humans get on horses to serve as a distraction, as they'll just ride them into where they want them to be. And then this kid shows up, and I forgot his name, and I feel so bad. I'm not even doing this as a bit, I had to IMDb it. It's Burn. Anyway, so he shows up on his own horse, and he's like, I'm a part of this too. I've been here the whole time, remember? And he ends up fucking everything up for himself because his horse trips and falls. And then Leo has to go save him. And he survives. But, you know, that's his scene. There you go. And as the army gets closer and closer to the crash site, Leo springs his trap and turns on the ship's engines to cause a massive blast to happen. Bodies fly everywhere, and the humans use this opportunity to attack. So now it's just a big old battle royale where everyone's fighting each other, people are dying left and right, the apes are jumping everywhere, it's crazy. But Krull dies? Oh, come on. So everybody was kung fu fighting until a bright light comes from the sky and a pod lands down, and Pericles comes out, which all the apes are convinced is Samos, their god. Samos has been mentioned in bits and pieces throughout the film, and was even prayed to during the dinner scene earlier on. Samos is one of the apes that led the rebellions against the humans when the spacecraft crashed onto this planet thousands of years ago. And his sudden return after all these years is a miracle. Of course, this isn't Samos, but what they don't know won't hurt them. Samos runs off into the ruined ship. Leo and Thade run after him. They fight. A gun gets involved. Thade gets the gun, but is then trapped before he can shoot Leo. And while he's in there, Attar finds out the truth and is pretty handily convinced to turn on him. Thade's not very good at this whole negotiating his life thing, as he tries to sweet talk Ari, who probably doesn't want much to do with him after he burned her hand. And he is now trapped, and that's it for Thade. So once again, chimpanzees save the day. I mean, there's still the years of trauma and slavery and all that sort of horrible stuff that everyone's going to have to work through, and that's probably going to take a really long time, but you know what, it's fine. There's a monkey here, look how adorable he is, everyone's happy. Leo says his goodbyes as he goes to go take Pericles' pod back to Earth, but first he gets a smooch from Ari. He gets into the pod and hopes he can just fly through the electrical storm again to get home. Why not? So he flings himself into time and space, and after some turbulence, he miraculously gets back to Earth. But you see, it's not how he left it. He crashes right at the statue of Lincoln and is terrified to see that it is Thade, or as I like to call him, Abraham Lincoln instead. He's surrounded by ape cops, and the movie ends. Well, that was an experience. And you know what? It wasn't terrible. It has its problems. It certainly could have used some more in the character department, especially for the humans. But its biggest problem was its constant tone shift and Mark Wahlberg. The contrast of how dead serious a lot of the subject matter is, along with a lot of the comedic moments, this didn't really work for me. But I also liked a good bit of the ape characters. I think there could have been a much better film here with some script rewrites and more time, which is something Tim Burton was not given by Fox. But of course, with any movie, there's usually promotion, and this movie had quite a lot, and some of it was pretty weird. Let's take a look. And let's start by watching this bizarre cross-promotion with the WWE. Now, I actually really like wrestling. I've been watching it on and off throughout different promotions for a long time, so I know just how weird things can get when it comes to cross-promotions. So in 2001, Chris Jericho was feuding with Stephanie McMahon and Triple H, and Stephanie McMahon was in the middle of the ring cutting a usual heel promo where everyone sucks and everyone is terrible. Then Chris Jericho comes out and starts hurling schoolyard insults at her. Now, in my defense, I hadn't started watching wrestling until a few years after this, so it was totally better after that. So Jericho continues insulting her, gets in the ring, and then two of the apes from Planet of the Apes show up with gifts in their hands, come into the ring, and pie Stephanie McMahon in the face. WWE, everybody! Man, poor Jim Ross is trying his hardest to promote the movie while this is happening. Good old JR. But of course, and thankfully, that's not the only promotion this movie had at the time. There was actually a very interesting one. Before the movie came out, 20th Century Fox set up a geocaching site that gave clues to users over time of how to get coordinates to find little boxes, called Project Ape. The story behind the ARG was not really connected to the film and was about a renegade group of humans trying to reveal an alternate primate evolution theory by putting artifacts around the world. And they really were all around the world, some being in the USA, Brazil, Australia, Japan. It was a really big project and it was really cool. Keep in mind, this was also in geocaching's infancy, and ARGs weren't even a thing yet, so I'm really impressed. Each cache had little props from the movie, and some little bits of memorabilia for the people who found them. One even had tickets to the premiere in New York. Interesting enough, there's still a couple of these caches out there, though most of them have been found. It was really cool to see how people got together to find these, and I think it was a brilliant promotional tactic. I also came across this cover of Premiere magazine, and I knew it, he came back and they had kids. There was this really interesting special that was aired on Fox for the movie, where it shows some of the behind the scenes stuff they did, and they talked to Tim Burton and the actors, and I really love this stuff. So yeah, I'm happy I came across it. It even gets introduced by a guy in full ape makeup. That was really fun. And of course a video game came along with this movie, but it wasn't related to the movie at all outside of being from the Planet of the Apes. It had a completely different story, and apparently it was not very good, and was in production long before Tim Burton's movie was even being made, because James Cameron was supposed to make it, and then he pulled out, and they were like, well, we already started, so they gave the project off to a French company who made a game based on the original novel. And even then, it was delayed for a number of reasons, so it didn't end up coming out until after the movie, where it was published by Fox Interactive and co-published by Ubisoft, and I'm sure that had nothing to do with anything. Also, there was a board game. Next board game night, you can whip this thing out and battle for ape supremacy with your friends. Of course, this is for the 2001 film. During the 70s, there was a lot of neat little crossovers of other media. While not all promotional, here's Roddy McDowell at the Carol Burnett show singing a duet with her. To promote the battle for the Planet of the Apes, Paul Williams showed up in full makeup on the Johnny Carson show. He even performs a song. Wow, these apes are talented. Charlton Heston did an opening for Saturday Night Live, and the entire audience, along with the cast members, were apes and were holding him prisoner and forcing him to perform. I adore silly stuff like this, and it was delightful finding this in my studies of this franchise. Starting in 1968, a company called Harry K. Williams Associates would run fake newspaper heralds along with the release of each film, with headlines and articles related to whatever film they were talking about. These were distributed to audiences attending the films. Around 1973, they started showing all 5 films back to back on CBS and had an ad campaign to go along with that. I really like this poster, it's cute. And of course, with all this comes the sheer amount of merchandise there was. Action figures with accessories and play sets, puzzles, coloring books, another board game, and of course, the Halloween costumes. And so much more. And then of course there's all the other media surrounding the franchise, like the television show, the cartoon, and comic books. And that's what I'll be talking about more in part 3, so I hope to see you there. I'd like to give a special thanks to the Project Ape geocaching community and the Planet of the Apes fan wiki, because I would have not have had nearly enough information if it wasn't for them. Thank you for showing me this weird, wonderful world around this wonderful franchise. All resources will be linked below, along with all the clips for the TV spots I showed you. Thank you for watching, have a great day, and remember to go ape. Bye!